What if everything you thought you knew about the world was just a tiny piece of the puzzle? Today, we're diving into a map that claims to show us what's really out there, beyond the so-called ice walls of Antarctica.
And really, that's the big question our source material is asking today. What if our world is just way bigger than we've been told? What if the edges of our maps aren't the end at all, but, you know, just the beginning of something much, much larger?
Okay, so let's get right into it. This right here, this is the map that started it all. It comes from a really interesting body of work online that lays out this entire alternate cosmology. And according to the people behind it, this isn't even the whole map. It's just a piece of a much larger one that shows a hidden and way more expansive reality. This is going to be our main guide for this whole explainer. And this quote from this source really kind of sets the stage perfectly. The core idea here isn't that we're trapped, not at all. It's that we're just in one room of a massive, maybe even infinite, mansion. And we have no idea what's in all the other rooms. Okay, so let's get into section 1, a map of everything. Before we start exploring all these new places, we've got to get our heads around the basic rules of this new world. So the very first thing you have to do is kind of forget the globe model for a minute. According to this source, the place we call Earth isn't some lonely rock spinning in space. Nope. It's described more like a single biological cell that's part of a huge interconnected network of other lands that are also full of life.
All right, let's keep going. Section 2 is where this idea really starts to build. We're going to break down the rules of this new cosmology, which the source calls the cellular reality. So, here's the core concept. Cellular domes. The source says reality isn't one big flat plane, but a grid of these self-contained ecosystems. You can almost picture them like giant cosmic terrariums, right? Each one with its own atmosphere and each one protected by its own electromagnetic dome.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. That ice wall from Antarctica that you hear about in other theories, well, here it gets a totally new name, a resonance boundary. It's not seen as an edge, but more like a border made of frequency that basically insulates our little cell and its unique biological code from the one next door.
And listen, this is a really, really important distinction to make. All those names you see on the map, Draco, Saturnia, Hercules, they're not supposed to be planets millions of miles away in space. According to the text, they are literally neighboring lands right here on the same level plane as us.
All right, so now that we've got the basic rules down, let's actually start our journey. Time for section 3, exploring the outer rings. Think of it as a quick tour of the neighborhood. So this tour is going to happen in 3 layers, kind of like a bullseye. We'll start in the inner ring, which they call the cradle cells. That's where we are. Then we move out to the middle ring, the power cells. And finally, we'll hit the outer ring, which are known as the guardian cells. First stop is in that middle ring, the lands of Draco. This place is described as a super high vibration area. It's basically the engine room for the whole northern part of the plane, just buzzing with intense electromagnetic activity. Okay, next up, we're heading to the lands of Saturnia. Now, this is pretty wild. According to the source, this is the cell that governs what they call the clockwork of time. And get this, in this model, those rings we think of around the planet Saturn, they're actually the shadows being cast by the dome of the cell as it spins. And then, way out in the outer ring, we find one of the guardian cells, the lands of Hercules. They call it a fortress cell because it's got these absolutely massive mountain ranges that are said to act as both a physical shield and a frequency shield, protecting all the inner rings from, well, whatever's outside. So we've got all these individual cells, right? But the source is clear. They're all connected. So the obvious question is how? And that brings us right to section 4, the veins of a cosmos. If you look real close at the map, you can actually see them, these white kind of vein-like lines running between all of the cells. This is what's called the fluid dynamic grid. The source describes it as a sort of cosmic plumbing system designed to transfer energy and the stuff it calls liquid light from one dome to the next. And man, this quote from the glossary just ties the whole concept together so well. It completely reframes our place in the universe. We go from being totally isolated to being intimately connected. We're not lost in space. We're all just neighbors in this huge living city of domes. You know, all of this leads to one giant question. If any of this is the real map of our world, then why on earth is it hidden? Our final section is going to dig into that. Section 5, Beyond the Lonely Rock. Well, the source material has a pretty direct answer. It claims this knowledge was intentionally suppressed to push something it calls a dull code system. And what's that? It's basically a worldview designed from the ground up to make humanity feel small, isolated, and totally insignificant. So let's put these two worldviews side by side. You've got the dull code system. You're on a lonely rock, resources are scarce, and everyone is separated. And then you have the cellular reality. You live in an infinite mansion, resources are abundant, and humanity is all connected. It's a pretty stark difference, right? So when you get right down to it, the ultimate why behind this map is this. According to the source, just revealing a map that shows potential abundance is a direct attack on the entire idea of scarcity, an idea that pretty much runs our entire world.
And that's where we'll leave it, because what we're looking at here isn't just an alternate map. It's a completely different philosophy of existence, which leaves us with one heck of a question to ponder. If this map really is a key, what does it unlock?